Welcome to another episode of The Swarm, a business and technology podcast brought to you by MyKrill. I'm your host, Wallace Chase. I'm a futurist, a lover of technology and its application in business, and I'm also the head of strategy and development at MyKrill. If you're not familiar with MyKrill, we're a very different type of consulting practice, and what makes us unique is that we're obsessively focused on our clients having what we call triumphant outcomes. Our expertise is ERP evaluation and selection, project management and project recovery, and custom applications. If you'd like to talk with us, you can navigate to our Contact Us page on our website and let us know when you'd like to meet. My guest today is the CEO of Blackswan Cybersecurity. He's an accomplished cybersecurity expert with over 25 years of business process and IT security experience. He's a published author, has a master's in criminal justice, and he's also a doctoral candidate for computer information systems and a professor of cybersecurity at University of Texas at San Antonio. I'm excited about this conversation. I'm really honored to have him on the podcast today. Mike Saylor, welcome to The Swarm.
Thanks, sir. Happy to be here.
So let's just jump right into the questions. You and I have known each other for a couple of months now. We've had a few meetings and you've actually been over to the office. So I know a lot about what you guys do, but right now I want to know what in the world happened to you that made you so interested in cybersecurity and cybercrime, and your background and how you came to be a thought leader in the cybersecurity industry and then eventually the CEO of a cybersecurity company.
Sure. Well, I think it's, people generally just gravitate to cool stuff. And I'm definitely one of those, techie. I like gadgets but really I think fundamentally, in my personality, I like information. So I'm a constant learner, consumer of information intelligence. What can I do with this information? Information is power to me. The more I know, the better I feel. But also, problem solving. There's also a huge community service component to my personality, giving back, educating, sharing, supporting. So that's huge to me. But how I got here, it's pretty interesting. I've had just about every job you can think of. My kids are amazed every time they ask if I've done that. But I started my career kind of in high school. My dad was in the Navy, and I just naturally interacted with a bunch of people there that tended to task me with things. So for 7 years, while I was also going to college, I had a football scholarship. And believe it or not, my first college degrees were not computers, even though I wanted to do computers since like junior high. Just different paths and different opportunities put in front of you. You kind of just have to figure things out. But I started my career kind of doing intelligence, but then majoring in anthropology and geology first, and then coming back to computer science, and then realizing that I really didn't want to be an engineer, writing device drivers for printers and things like that. So more of the business side, more of the true like strategy, solution focused stuff, more consulting. So my undergraduate degree is actually in information systems. It's a science degree, but it came out of the business school at UT, University of Texas at Arlington. And then very, very quickly, and along the way, I had just about every IT job you could think of: hardware, cable puller, admin, all the way up through, over the years, CIO, CISO for large organizations. Yeah. But in the middle there, I actually had a really long run as an auditor, so a technology auditor. But almost every position I held, whether it was hardware or audit, there was always this security and risk mitigation lens that I had. You guys are doing this to be compliant, but this other stuff is still a risk. Or you asked me to build this thing. Do you realize the risk it presents and the security that you need to put around it so it's not misused and that kind of thing? So really being able to see kind of the bigger picture with technology and how organizations rely on it and the risks that those present that are not typically addressed by just being compliant or good best practice, or we've done it this way for however many years and it hasn't broken yet. And so I got really good at kind of observing those things and consulting with organizations on how to mitigate that or fill the deficiency, address the deficiency whether it's people or technology or procedures or whatever the case may be. But in doing so, also became very engaged in responding to criminal activity. So I've worked with just about every level of law enforcement since like 1999, including standing up the North Texas FBI InfraGard chapter, helping do that. But I talk to the FBI probably a couple times a week, Secret Service maybe once a week. I've been in investigations of large hacking, like the Ashley Madison hack, counterterrorism stuff, and that then lent itself to. And actually, I was recruited by the FBI in 2004, and just never really went all the way through there because other things came up. But that lent itself to my graduate degree being in criminal justice. I really wanted to know more about how I could help, kind of improve my skills and knowledge in that area. And then along the way as well, becoming a professor so that I can help educate and share what I know, but also along the way being an entrepreneur and starting companies and finding the right resources to help you build the right kind of culture and deliver service and support the way that you intend, kind of your corporate culture and mission. And it was just much easier to take bright people that weren't already acclimated to some other organization's way of doing business and teaching them how to do it our way. And so we started an intern program in 2011, still strong today. We've probably had over 1,000 students come through that.
That's awesome.
And I've built 2 companies that way. Start with the core, geniuses, and then train up your army of cyber analysts, engineers, and consultants. And we've done it that way for almost 15 years.
Wow. So as you're entering into the cybersecurity arena, even really before the cybersecurity boom, late 90s, early 2000, was there a situation or an incident that gave you the forethought that, hey, I'm really going to dive into cyber criminal activity, and this is going to be my, my direction for my career for the next several years? Was there something that happened, or how did you have that forethought?
There was. So I had a taste of kind of the cloak and dagger stuff, doing intelligence work early on. It was very independent work. You had some resources and an objective, and you just figured out how to achieve your goal. And not quite as cool probably as it sounds. Some of it was actually pretty lame, but good experience. But it gave me that mentality of seeing things differently. Well, then, fast forward probably 4 or 5 years. I was an auditor at a global $5 billion telecom that did not have a cybersecurity team. And we were getting calls from law enforcement saying, "Hey, we're seeing your client's data, your customers' data out on the internet." And they didn't know where it came from, and neither did our organization. But getting the data set and then figuring out where it could have come from, who was involved, and then really trying to put the pieces together for that timeline led us to our internet service provider. Even though we were a telecom, we also resold internet service and pagers and cell phones and stuff like this. And we had recently just changed vendors from a company in California to a company in Salt Lake City. And that migration involved a bulk data set of our clients, which included their payment, their credit card information and some other stuff. Well, the new ISP just let it sit on their web server, their file transfer server, apparently unrestricted. And when we called to ask them questions about this, they would just hang up on us. They were, very, it's not our fault. We didn't do it. It came from somewhere else, this kind of thing. So then really getting to know the FBI and the Secret Service and how like jurisdictions work and the type of crimes and the thresholds and all these things was really very interesting to me. More information. And so working initially with the FBI Dallas, it then transitioned to Secret Service Salt Lake City. And I actually got to fly to, go to Salt Lake, brief with the Secret Service when they when they showed up at the company to serve the warrant and kick the door in and say, "You're not going to tell us to go away. We're going to sit here until we get the answers we want."
Yeah.
And then sit in a conference room with, some of these experienced investigators, different levels, and just, sharing stories and talking about the process and their theories about how things worked. Ultimately figuring out that it was this vendor, but then continuing the investigation to actually find the hacker that did it. And we actually caught him in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Awesome.
Working with local law enforcement there. His name is Matthew Freeze, and that's his real name, not his hacker name, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then traveling to Corpus to try and interview this guy to figure out exactly how he did it, so that we could hold the vendor accountable, but also help them, shore up their security so it doesn't happen again. But not ever being able to talk to him because apparently he also hacked NASA and Department of Defense and some others. So there was a longer line of more important people in front of me.
Wow.
I never got to ask the questions.
Wow.
But that really catapulted me into to more involvement. Later that year, I got appointed to the Cybercrime Committee of the North Texas Crime Commission. So that's all, different levels of law enforcement talking about cybercrime and legislation and changes to laws and how different crimes are prosecuted and this kind of thing. Well, they developed a subcommittee called the Cybercrime Committee, and I'm still a member of that, not as active as I used to be, but that's how that allowed me to build some really good relationships with specifically the FBI, but also the Secret Service, their crime lab guys, their forensics incident response, and some other things. So, and even some of the military investigation units.
Wow.
So I've really enjoyed kind of developing that part of my career, and it's really helped being able to share information. Whenever we respond to a breach, I always ask if we can involve law enforcement as soon as possible because they love to share information and they love to collect information. And this breach may be the missing piece to figuring out who the bad actors are. Or maybe this other client, paid for the ransomware decryptor that may work in your environment, so you don't have to pay the ransom. So this kind of things, that kind of collaboration exists, and I don't think a lot of people know about it.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's an incredible story. You seem like you just never stopped on that trajectory once that happened, because you've written a book about it, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And you like to share information about it. I've learned a lot just from talking to you the few times that we've talked about. Of course, MyKrill's being a consulting company has a lot of information that we want to keep secure as well, and that was kind of the emphasis of our relationship. What are some of the schemes that are out there right now that you've seen, and what kind of damage can they do, and what should businesses be doing as a follow-up, just as a minimum layer of security, and then maybe even further than that, what's something that they really should be doing from a maximum level of security?
Sure, and I think one of the things that's important to realize is that organizations kind of figure that we're not a target, we're a nobody, we've never made the news, we're not publicly traded, we don't do anything special. Bad guys don't care.
Yeah,
you still have money, you still have a business they can leverage. You've got to make a living, you've got employees. All that stuff is leverage to them. All they have to do is figure out how to get into your environment. And in a lot of cases, bad guys don't target you. They don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to target company A. Most of the time, that's not how it works. Unless they're like, you did make the news and there is this big thing. Maybe that got their attention, but in most cases, they just wake up and check the results of their internet searches. So they've got, campaigns running 24 hours a day. And those campaigns
take a variety of
they're structured a variety of ways. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is that once they have interest in you, they will go to the nth degree to figure out how to get what they want. So if you think about a traditional network, you've got your company and your computers and your users and your servers and your wireless access and your internet access and your website. Those are traditional targets. That's kind of like your preliminary attack surface, right? That's what everybody knows you have. And they will try to get at you the traditional way. But if they really want what's in your company, your prized possessions, your data, your financials, your money eventually, or your intellectual property, then they're going to do as much reconnaissance on you and your employees and who you do business with, who are your customers, who's your partners, what were your tax returns, and then from that, they're going to try to exploit every potential attack surface related to those things. And what I mean by that, let's say you're a target at MyKrill. Well, maybe MyKrill invests a ton of resources in securing MyKrill. And so attacking you directly is a waste of time. We tried it. You've got good stuff. I'm not going to waste my time. Well, let me look at the property records. Let me look at tax returns. Let me look at LinkedIn and find out where these potentially high-valued employees or partners or customers live. And I'm going to go to their house and sit on the street and attack your wireless and attack your Bluetooth and maybe bug your car. Or even one of the schemes that we've seen, very complicated scheme, was they wanted to attack company A. They found out company A's high value target, where they lived, and then from that who their neighbors are, and do they have kids that play together, right? And so then they found out what school these kids go to. Well, then they sit outside the school. I believe it was outside the school, and they compromised the I think it was an iPad of the neighbor's kid. And so now a compromised iPad makes it back into the neighbor's house, which eventually makes it over time to the target's house. And inside the target's house, the kid's like, hey, can I put my iPad on your wireless network? And so now I'm on the target's wireless network because I compromised the neighbor's kid that plays with your kid. And now that I'm in your network, I can do reconnaissance on your different devices. And you probably brought your work laptop home to do some work, and it's on your wireless network. And so it's just a matter of time, and they will wait until it's opportune to then infect your machine so that you take it back to work. And now I'm inside your network, completely circumventing all the work you did to protect MyKrill, and they'll do it that way.
That's scary, man.
So that's not very common. That takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But probably the most common is social engineering primarily through email. And they get the confidence in you to interact with those emails by connecting with you on social media, LinkedIn, whatever. There are so many fake profiles on LinkedIn right now, but it's just a stepping stone, and it may not be you. They want to connect with you because of who you're connected with, and so you're just a stepping stone to build the trust in the relationship, so that, well, if you're connected to them, then it must be okay, and I'll connect to them. And the next thing you know, they're getting a LinkedIn message with an attachment that's got malware in it. Here's my resume, or the invitation to the happy hour, or whatever it is. But move a step ahead. The next thing that they're getting really good at is internal company reconnaissance. So once they compromise access to your network, whether it's a user or through a vulnerability of some sort, they're looking around to figure out what you do, what does your company do, what are your financials, how much insurance do you have, who are your employees, and then they're either taking that information to sell it to a data broker, or leverage it some other way, or now they're going to deploy the ransomware, and they know exactly how much to push you for because they've seen your financials and they know your insurance. And they've already done the recon on where your backups are and what your processes are. And
it's a criminal-minded organization, I guess, or group of individuals, or sometimes individuals that does this. What's scary to me is the part that you talked about where there was physical reconnaissance happening. There was, people staking out a home or children, and their iPads and phones and things like that. It's disheartening to know that there are people out there with that type of intention and capability to be able to pull it off. The first time I was really exposed to cybersecurity or cyber incident was, and they didn't really call it that back then, was early 2000s. I worked at ADP, and I was in a sales organization. I reported at the time to the senior VP of sales globally. And I got and I didn't interact with him that much, only on quota calls. And that was just basically talking about pipeline and sales funnel and what I owed him. But at any rate, I got an email out of the blue after not talking to him for a long time, and it said, "Hey, I need you to please go purchase some gift cards from Walmart or somewhere. I can't even remember where. Please go purchase gift cards, and I need them to be in this denomination. I'm on a flight. I'm landing. I need you to mail them to me as soon as I land." It was just this weird type of email that I didn't expect to get from him. And it startled me so much that I told, a couple of people in the office, "Hey, he's emailing me asking me to do this. Is this normal?" And somebody had the forethought to say, "Hey, I think I know what this is. This is something called phishing." And that was kind of my introduction to that. Is that still something that, I know we do phishing training and things like that all the time, but
It does happen.
is that still one of the ways that they try to attack a company?
It is. In fact, even I get those, and they're usually text messages now. But the social engineering today also takes a bit of a different dimension, because they do what are called multi-dimensional social engineering. So that maybe they sent you an email and said, "Hey, I need you to do this for me." And there's always there's some of the indicators of an illegitimate email like that is it's urgent, has to be done right away. I'm not available to confirm this in any other way. You can't call me. I'm on a flight, or I'm in a business meeting. There's usually it's usually a superior, and it's usually not your direct boss. It's a chief of some sort, CFO, CEO, whatever. And then it is some weird out of band financial instrument, like a gift card. Like, does your organization really ever use gift cards? Yeah. And if not, then, well, that's odd. Well, every time you go, "That's odd," that should be an indication that you should verify it some other way. But what I mean by multi-dimensional attack is they send you an email, and if that doesn't work, maybe next it's a text message. So it would be, "Hey, did you get my email? This is urgent. Please respond." And if that doesn't work, then lastly, especially if it's somebody that you don't really know, they'll call you on the phone and go, "Hey, man, I've sent you an email. I've sent you a text. I haven't had a response. I need this done." And they'll do that.
That's bold.
But they also do. There's also, multi-dimensional also includes some other things. Like when we do phishing exercises, we'll send employees emails, and we'll draft a campaign that makes sense. So maybe we do the reconnaissance and figure out who what nonprofits they support, or what technologies they use in their environment. And we'll craft an email that says something like that, like, "Hey, we're rolling out a new help desk, like we've talked about at our last company meeting. And here's a link to learn more about that. But at a minimum, I need you to click this link and input your credentials so that we can move you over," that kind of thing. So then we'll create a fake website that replicates whatever that is that we presented. And so there's tons of examples of that too.
Wow.
And
That's
maybe
genius.
the page that comes up looks like looks like your nonprofit page, and you've got to put some data there. That page is actually fake, but then we forward you and that credential to the real site, so you don't get an indication that you just were phished. But phishing is still a huge problem. In fact, the stats of unsolicited email, back in the day, I think it was some crazy number of millions a second of spam email go out a day. Well, now, the number of unsolicited emails is still increasing, but the percentage of like spam to phishing is flipped. So like 88, almost 90% of spam email today is phishing email.
Yeah. And I see it more now in like my home email, like my Gmail address or something like that. And I've gotten to where I could pick them out right away. It's, "Hey, claim your prize." It's your Best Buy. You got to claim your prize at Best Buy. It's a TV, and I can see how, maybe, someone, who's not familiar with this type of stuff, or, maybe elderly or something like that, could just fall for it right away, and it's scary.
There is another attack that we call brand jacking. And so, you mentioned you worked at ADP, where there was another a payroll processing company, and a lot of their clients are just mom and pop shops like lawn care and house cleaning, and bad guys used their brand, or they tried to replicate their brand to further legitimize the phishing email that says you've got to change, how you make your payments and where you put your money to pay your employees and that kind of thing. So they jack their brand to use in their phishing attacks so that it looks more legitimate. And then, how do you consult with a company to try and standardize and kind of watermark your brand so that when people get emails that look like yours, they have confidence that it really is yours?
What are, I guess, one of the main one or two things that small companies can do? And then, what are some of the things that, I guess, in your mind, some of the larger companies that have a lot of sensitive data, a lot of intellectual property, a lot of different, money movement mechanism, things like that. What should they be thinking about if they're not thinking about it already?
Man, I could talk the rest of the day on this. Fundamentally, well, probably my biggest recommendation these days with ransomware and other issues is make sure you have good backups. Back up all the stuff that you care about. Storage is cheap today. It's nothing like it was even 5 years ago. You can get 4 terabyte, 100 terabyte drives for nothing. Figure out where your critical data is. And what I mean by critical is it's not just data that's important to you, like your financials or your client data. Critical data also means everything you need to run your business. So if you have your critical client data and that's offline and secure and nobody can get it, but then your entire network gets encrypted, can you rebuild your network in order to then put your sensitive client data back on it and continue business? So there's really 2 parts to that, but in essence, figure out the critical data that your company needs to function. And so that's your operating systems, your applications, your configurations, and then all your data. And make sure that's backed up and reliable and offline. We have so many clients that say, well, our backups are this server over here, but only one person has credentials to those, and it's pretty safe. Well, bad guys are going to be in your network until they figure out what those credentials are. And once they have that, then they're going to strategize about how to, delete your data, delete your backups, and then infect your network. And I've seen that on so many incident responses that we've done over the years, and some of them have been pretty bad, like billion-dollar companies. But to your point, that's a big company. Earlier this year, we helped a 5-person company recover from ransomware, and their backups were completely annihilated as well. So the bad guys don't care. They'll figure it out. They'll figure out a way to get something out of you once they figure out who you are and what you have. So backups are critical. But in that exercise of figuring out where your critical data is, expand on that. So, all right, so all my critical data is on this server. All right, what are you doing to protect that server? What are the layers of protection? There's physical security, because if I can touch it, I can own it. I don't need a password if I can take the machine. I don't need a password if I can plug into the back of your firewall or router or whatever, technologies in the infrastructure. I don't need a password because I can just collect data, and I have the time and the patience to do so. So from your core critical stuff, expand out from there. And what are the layers that you have in place? The people, the processes, the technology that can mitigate the risk of that stuff being stolen or deleted or changed. And then start to address those things. Build a roadmap. You can't do it all overnight. Maybe there's the resources required to fix those problems exceed your budget. Well, then, at least you have a plan. And now you can begin to prioritize and address those on some kind of roadmap. And there's always alternatives. And in that process, you're going to determine that you don't have enough people. The people you have don't have enough experience or the right skills, and you don't have the right technology to really fill all the gaps. Well, that's when you start looking for, outside. Let's find a vendor. Let's find someone that I can call when I have a question, or the expert that can come in when we have a problem. At a minimum, if we ever have an incident, who's going to help us get us through that? And one of those resources is law enforcement. And figuring out who to call needs to happen today. So reach out to law enforcement, local police department, local FBI office, and just say, hey, I'm just a local business and I want to make contact now in case something happens in the future. Yeah. They'll probably buy you coffee or lunch. and you'll have a phone number. So I tell clients today, if you get a breach and you call the Dallas FBI, you're going to leave a message. It's going to go to a voicemail box.
Yeah.
But if you reach out to them today and say, I'd like to build a relationship with you guys, then they'll meet and you'll get somebody's business card with their cell phone number. And when you have a problem, you're able to call a person instead of a mailbox.
Yeah,
and then
that's insightful. I wouldn't even think about that. Proactively get in touch with some of these agencies.
Well, it includes your insurance company too. A lot of our clients that we do tabletop exercises for, they're like, all right, so when do we involve insurance? Well, you should call your insurance company and ask them, when do we report a breach? When do I call and tell you we've got a problem? And a lot of them will say, as soon as you figure you do, as soon as you think you have a problem, call us and we'll guide you through whether or not you need to, we need to be more involved. But at a minimum, and this is for kind of bigger breaches or bigger incidents, a lot of insurance companies will only cover certain things. And in covering those certain things, a lot of times you have to be on their pre-approved list. And so you may be using a vendor and spending a lot of money that the insurance company won't reimburse you for. So insurance company, legal advice, your experts, for your specific environment. If you're a heavy database environment, you need to find a good database expert. If you're a heavy telecom environment, you need a good network engineer. If whatever the case is, you need to do that analysis, and they're usually pretty quick. Like we do an exercise called an IT or technology risk assessment, where we look at everything, look at the gaps, prioritize them, put them on a roadmap, and you've got something to work towards. But that highlights all the deficiencies or gaps in your environment, and your people, and your processes. And then from that, you can start to say, all right, well, maybe we don't have enough insurance, or we do have insurance and I've never even talked to those people. Or Bob handled the insurance and he hasn't been here for 5 years. So who knows what. And we were working an incident response where we were responding under the assumption that they only have $5 million in cyber insurance. So we were negotiating with the bad guys to try and get the ransom under 5. And in the event that we had to pay it, we were trying to keep our the response team, the collective response team of different vendors involvement managed so that the expense isn't excessive. And 4 days into it, somebody walks into the briefing call and hears us talk about $5 million in insurance, and they go, we have $10 million in insurance, right? You're like, where did that come from? Well, yeah, we have 2 $5 million policies. And nobody knew that. This Wow. Analyst that just happened to be walking through the room that reviewed some contracts not too long ago. And so all that stuff is really important. You need to get your ducks in a row, because it's not a good time to start figuring out who's on first or what play we're going to run or who the head coach is on game day. You need to figure out what all that is today as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think this is so insightful. And, a lot of our listeners are small business owners too. It's top of mind for us all the time, and for our clients as well that we talk to and that we deal with and we work for. So I think it's extremely insightful, some of the things that you're talking about. I want to switch gears a second and go because I want to be mindful of your time. I want to switch gears and talk about something that I think is pretty interesting, and that's that you're an author. And I want to know a little bit more about the book, and then the process of how you got involved with that.
Sure, and some of that goes back to the evolution or expansion, I guess, of my perspective and the value I hope to give back. And that's, I went from an information systems degree into criminal justice, and that's primarily because in my experience with not just the FBI but some definitely the local police departments, they don't have the right resources or training to deal with digital evidence and where to look for stuff, right? So really helping train them. Like we were part of the Dallas FBI's training on, what is the dark net and how do we get there type of thing years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't just us, but we were part of this big training. And then continuing today, asking questions and being kind of a consultant, or at least a sounding board for law enforcement when they have cases that involve phones and social media and encryption and this kind of stuff, tracking the transactions of cryptocurrency and really understanding, why somebody would have done what they did. A lot of the cases that we get in our organization, where companies come to us or individuals come to us for help with digital crime type stuff, we always try to figure out, well, why? You say this has been going on for 7 years or 5 years. Why? Why would it be going on for so long? Who are you? What do you have that's so valuable? Because there's expense involved with that. If someone's really doing that for that long, someone's investing money to get it something valuable.
Yeah.
So understanding that. So the importance of my role in the book is really working with criminal justice people. A lot of the other co-authors are criminal justice people. They're former law enforcement, sheriffs, federal law enforcement, and so they wrote this book, and it used to be called Computer Crime and Computer Terrorism. And I told them we really need to change that. But I first got involved really heavily in the third edition of the book while I was a graduate student, which was also pretty cool for me because the cohort that I went through at UT Dallas was all law enforcement, all the chiefs, Chief of McKinney, cool. chiefs from Dallas, chiefs. So I was like one of the only non-chiefs in my class. So it was super cool to share some stories and work with them to get through that degree. But the idea there was instead of having to write a thesis, which is typical for graduate level degree, my graduate professor, Bob Taylor, who was the one that started the book, asked me to review the book and give him some new content as part of instead of writing a thesis, I just had to make his book better. And so I reviewed the whole book and gave him a ton of suggestions. And in doing so, he asked me to write all of I think it was chapter 5 in the fourth edition or the third edition. So I wasn't a named author on the book, but on the first page of chapter 5 at the very bottom, it said contributed by Mike Saylor. So I got some accolades there. But then also, I've done presentations and public speaking for 20 years, and so a lot of the graphics and things that I would create to support my talks, they actually put in the book. So I actually have some referenced graphics and things in there. And then so that was my introduction to the book. And I think the value I brought to that was the cyber perspective, the actual everyday, we deal with bad guys in cyber, and we know how the investigations work and the tools that are really needed and how that process would go. I was able to offer that perspective to the other authors and really improve the value and the context in a lot of the contents of the book across the multiple chapters. And then the fourth edition, one of the authors fell off, and I was named named author on the cover, and then I became responsible for 3 full chapters in that book. And then now this fifth edition, I've got one more question to answer from the editors about a picture, some coloring on a picture or something. But this time I've been tasked, I think, with 5 chapters to update.
Wow. And everything seems like it happens so quickly, in this particular arena. It has just it's skyrocketed from, a simple phishing attempt to like what you're talking about, mastermind schemes of, 3, 4, 10, 20 people that work together to do social engineering and work on something for a very, very long period of time. And one of the things that's fascinating to me now is the more we as MyKrill get into some of our development work, we're looking at AI engines and machine learning and things like that. Talk to me just briefly about if you're seeing any way that these bad actors are utilizing, like a ChatGPT type service or something like that to be able to further their criminal endeavors. Absolutely.
So I think ChatGPT is great for developing phishing campaigns and conversations. So I can, especially as somebody that's been, much like this meeting, maybe transcribed. If there's any transcription out there about how I talk, or the things I would say, my vernacular, or a particular topic that I'm passionate about, you can ask Chat GPT to replicate that or create something new. And it'll go find something I've written. Fortunately, my name is very close to a billionaire that started MicroStrategy. So a lot of times that I've tested this, it's actually come back with his stuff,
That's cool.
which is good for me. So Chat GPT is really great at going out into the body of information that's publicly available and developing new content. And you can do so based on a theme or the way somebody talks or in a certain way. You can define those types of parameters with what you ask it to create. AI in general is getting pretty scary. There are already cyber criminals using AI to conduct attacks, and it's easy. It's easy to do, and it goes back to bad guys being lazy. They'd rather be playing games or whatever they're doing these days, and just have the AI do the work. And we've seen that even on commercial, like legit tools. There are fully automated network penetration tests now. There has been for a while some AI technology that sits in your environment and simulates attacks, so that you can, at random or on a scheduled basis, figure out whether or not your controls and your people and your processes are working well, but also growing and evolving when you added a new server, you added a new network segment, or we acquired this company and integrating their network into ours. So it's just kind of an ongoing thing, and AI will go out and inventory all your assets and learn your behavior and baseline stuff, and so it's pretty scary, and I think it's just going to really accelerate bad guys' success. It's been improving over the years anyway, and mainly because we are continuously behind in how to react. I tell everybody all the time, secure your data, and the very next client incident response call may be somebody that I've already known, that I've already told that to, and they're like, yeah, we just never got around to it, or we didn't get the budget, or we couldn't get it to work, or whatever. A lot of the vulnerabilities that are being exploited today are usually somewhere between 5 and 8 years old. If it's not a 0-day, it's one that's been around for a while that companies just either haven't fixed or haven't figured out how to fix without breaking other stuff.
So where do you see it going? What's the nightmare scenario? I'm curious. I hear people talk about AI from just a general cybersecurity standpoint. Where do you see machine learning going, and how do you see it affecting your industry?
Well, I think I'm going to make a general statement about AI and technology in general. I think we have evolved and are continuing to evolve into putting more trust in technology. Just take Chat GPT as an example. If you ask Chat GPT today something that you really wanted to know, maybe you're going to base a decision on it, and you're going to rely on this AI to give you the information you need to make that decision. And it comes back and says, here's the data you need. And you're going to go, okay, well, that helped me make my decision. Did you validate the data that it gave you? Or did you just go, this is AI and it's smart, and I'm just going to rely on what it said? Well, 99% of the people are going to take it for what it's worth. It said, do it, so I did it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably the scariest thing to me. And especially when you start to humanize AI by putting it in a robot or making it your home assistant or your office assistant, and you're replacing real people with technology that we are just going to inherently believe and trust without thinking. And I think we've seen an evolution of that, especially on social media, where something gets posted on social media and everybody just goes, oh my God, that's the truth, without validating it. We've stopped thinking for ourselves. We've stopped looking and being diligent in validating what's being presented to us. And I think that's going to get worse and worse and worse, especially when AI becomes mainstream and people start, being more comfortable with it. ChatGPT has been proven to be wrong. They did some story on I think it was a journalist, and they asked ChatGPT to write a history of all the things that she's ever done, and like 80% of it was wrong.
Wow.
It just made it up, pulled it out of the air, said, here's what she did. And she's like, I never did that. And no one with my name has ever done that. So where did it get that information?
That's interesting. So it's coded to fill in the gaps with some sort of data somehow. It
seems like smart. And so that's scary to me. And now apply that to cyber. if we're going to use AI to do our network assessments, are you just going to believe what the results are, or are you going to go validate it? Well, if you have to go validate it, then why would you use AI to begin with?
Yeah.
Because there's already tools out there that you run to tell you where your problems are. Well, then you're going to go validate whether or not that's a real problem. I have a great example of that. We did a security assessment for a multi-million-dollar telecom cell phone company, and the preliminary results came back and said they had 300 Xboxes running in their environment. Xbox. And so I talked to the CIO and go, do y'all have some kind of like employee like entertainment area? You have like an arcade? Do you let people plug stuff in? And he's like, not at all. Well, the reason we had that response was because that was a typical response from a device. So that the tool said, what are you? You know, we tried to enumerate what this host was. And the host says, I've got these ports open and these services running. And the tool goes, oh, that's what Xboxes do. So it must be an Xbox. Well, then, if we reported that, we would look pretty silly.
Yeah.
Because obviously they didn't. So now you've got to manually go validate that. All right, well, let me run some other queries and let me look, run some other tools, or actually just walk over there and see if that's really what's plugged into the wall. Right? And well, that's what AI is going to do. AI is going to run these tools to collect information about something, and it's either going to immediately say, that's an Xbox, or it's going to be tied into these other tools, which you then have to tell it what to use and how to respond and how to validate. And so similar to I almost the evolution of a lot of cyber tools. It started off with this, this push button thing, but then required a ton of manual validation. Well, then someone thought, well, I can automate that somehow. And sure, automation addresses maybe a percentage of the population of things that may be accurate, but that doesn't remove the need for people to validate, and whether that's the results of a query, the data from a question, the story it creates. What scares me is we're going to continue to devolve into trusting technology and not doing any of the work ourselves.
Yeah. And that ultimately is going to provide a lot of opportunities for bad actors to take advantage of. And
because they know people.
Yeah. The implications are
That
astonishing.
is one of the continuously growing reasons for success that bad guys have, is they understand the inherent flaws in human nature. We are lazy as a species. We do have a kind of a herd mentality. So if you told me something was true and I know you and I'm like, well, he's a smart guy, it must be true. And I just rely on that. I don't go verify it on my own. And that may be appropriate in some cases, but really important stuff, like you're going to make life decisions or big financial decisions, or, the application of other, resources, that should be validated somehow, and not just, trust some, especially a tool or an AI to give you that information. Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. I want to end with just one thing, and that's let everyone know, all the listeners and the viewers, what Blackswan is, what you guys do. Give us the bullet points. I think a lot of people want to know, now that they know who you are and they find you very fascinating and interesting and have all this thought leadership and all this experience. What is Blackswan? What do you guys do?
Well, thanks for all that. First, I'm trying to get our marketing guy to change our slogan to something like we do cyber ... all of it. But I think that might be presumptuous. But we truly are a full life cycle cyber company. We can help organizations figure out where they are from a cyber best practice hygiene perspective and develop strategy and cyber program. We can help you line up with any compliance or regulatory requirements you have, whether it's NIST or ISO, or maybe you need to get a SOC 2 Type 2 on the services you provide other people. We can help you with those readiness assessments. And develop a remediation or a maturity roadmap, and then help you with the remediation as well. We also do training on cyber, both kind of customized, instructor-led or Zoom-led, but also some packaged solutions like phishing exercises and so on. We do traditional cyber stuff like vulnerability assessments, pen tests at every level, facility, you break into buildings in the middle of the night type of thing. And that's kind of the coolest part. But then just traditional stuff like networks and applications and mobile devices. We do incident response, and so if you have a problem, well, we can help you through it. Forensics, in the event that we need to collect evidence, maybe it's employee misconduct or someone left and you need to determine whether or not they took a bunch of data with them, or you're in the middle of litigation and you need an expert to help you analyze data. And then at the core of our company is a 24/7 fusion center. We're fully U.S. staffed, U.S. based, U.S. platform. Your data stays in the U.S., worked on by U.S. people, U.S. citizens. We also have an on-premise deployment in the event that your data needs to stay inside your walls instead of up in the cloud. But we monitor your stuff 24 hours a day, whether or not you have, and we've got some kinds of clients that have everything you need. They have the entire solution. They just don't have enough people. And so we fill in the gaps. We'll do after hours and weekends so that your people have time off and can do regular life stuff. But then we have clients that don't have the right technology. So we'll work with you to find the right solution that fits your budget, that makes sense. And then our people will monitor it and support you 24 hours a day.
That's great. That's a great explanation. I know I'm a fan of Blackswan, and now I'm a fan of Mike Saylor as well. Thanks for giving me the time today to join me. I know you're busy. Tried to keep this to right around 45 minutes. This has been a delight, man. A real pleasure. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on the Swarm.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank my guest today, Mike Saylor, CEO of Blackswan Cybersecurity. And I'd like to thank you for listening to The Swarm, a business and technology podcast brought to you by MyKrill's. If you'd like to talk with us, you can navigate to our Contact Us page on our website and let us know when you'd like to meet.